to be a millionaire or some kind of petty bourgeoisie anytime you live in here. In this country, you got to be in skullduggery, making you money illicitly to live like somebody. In this country, it's outrageous and insane. Them crazy prices in Port of Spain, and like the merchants going out their brain, and the working man like the only toiling in vain. Where you ever hear a television for 7,000, $250,000 for little piece of land? A pair of sneakers, $200, 80, 90,000 for motor cars. At last, here in Trinidad, we see capitalism gone mad. It's sad and getting more bad because to capitalism gone mad. Provide for your family today on your present salary is an impossibility. In this country, so many bills to pay, there is no conceivable way to save for a rainy day. In this country, avariciousness, to be precise, is why every damn thing so overpriced. Big business making everybody feel government give them an open license to steal. Would you believe me? 1 night of panty is $19.90, $20 for some baby milk. The cheapest jersey costs over 60, 200 and change a yard for silk. It's hard here in Trinidad. Lord have mercy, capitalism gone mad. It's sad, things getting more bad. Oh Lord, capitalism gone mad.
This is Caribbean Vibes.
To buy a pack of cigarette, just leave you with a hole in your wallet, and money is so hard to get. In this country, necessity or luxuries, it doesn't matter what the item is, they're charging anything they please. In this country, primary school books prices loot, is highway robbery, the price of food. All hopes and dreams elude the poor man, but politicians still expect good work attitude. Just imagine this, the cheapest coffee, over 3,000, not even dying today easy. Thousands of dollars for the undertaker, so you could get a spot in the cemetery. It's hard here in Trinidad. Oh Lord, capitalism gone mad. The gladness that once we had is gone because capitalism gone mad. You got to have heavy contact, know how to move up in society to make any kind of impact. In this country, you got to know how to chip the feel, how to scheme and swindle properly, perfect the art of wheel and deal. In this country, I say survival in this land isn't easy for no man. With unemployment and high inflation, Some of we go dead before the end of this recession. Where the hell is this? Some mango chuli costing $3.50, $40 for one watermelon. Half your salary for fish meat and poultry. Time you buy greens, all your money gone. It's hard here in Trinidad. Lord have mercy, capitalism gone mad. It's sad and getting over. Lord, capitalism gone mad. Okay, we're going to a serious song now. From a land so far, I was caught and I was brought here from Africa. I'm a slave from a land so far. I was caught and I was brought here from Africa. Well, it was lips like fire from the white slave master every day. I down on my knees, weeks and weeks before we crossed the seas to reach in the West Indies. And then they make me work.
Yes, I work.
I said I work.
And I work.
Good
Lord, no pay.
I toil,
hard each day.
I'm dying. I'm crying, my God. Well, Lord, I want to be free. Many times I wanted to run, but the English slave master standing there with the gun, the gun, the gun. Oh, I know he gonna shoot to kill. So I stay and I pray, but I plan it still. Yes, I study night and day how to break away. I got to make a brilliant escape. But every time I think about the whip and them dogs, my body that start to shake. He make me work.
Yes, I work.
I said I work.
Yes, I work.
Oh Lord, don't pay. I toil
hard each day.
I'm dying. Oh Lord, I want to be free. There was much to say, and I hope that the boss would have listened to me someday. Although he knew my request was small, it was the stick and the whip there to answer me when I called. We had to chant and sing to express our feeling to that wicked and cruel man. That was the only medicine to make him listen. And it's so calypso began. He made me work.
Yes, I work.
I work.
And I work.
Oh Lord, no play. I toil. I toil. I toil. I toil.
On each day.
I'm dying, oh Lord. Crying to my God. Well, Lord, I want to be free, my God. And then times change in so many ways. Till one day, somebody said, free the bloody slaves. I was then put out on the street. I had no clothes, I had no food, I had no place to sleep. Lord, I had no education, no particular ambition. This I cannot conceal. Forgot my native culture. I live like a vulture. From the white man I had to steal because he made me work.
Yes, I work.
I work.
Yes, I work.
Oh Lord,
No pay.
time.
Toil. On each day.
I'm dying. I'm oh Lord, I want to be free.
Oh, good evening, good evening, good evening, good evening. Welcome to Politics 101. We've been away for a while, understandably so. It was budget season, and one of the many hats that we have to wear. And so it took us away from Politics 101, but we're back. We're back and ready to continue this aspect of our work. I want to welcome all of you. Those of you who have been inquiring when will we be back, those of you who have been following us as we engage the budget and other political issues. Welcome. Wherever you're joining us from, welcome to Politics 101. Those of you who join us from Berbice, either side of the river, whether it is on the eastern side of the river or the western side of the river, welcome. Welcome to all those of you who are joining us from Demerara, the banks, the coast, welcome. And those of you further afield, the Region 7, Region 8, Region 9, Region 10, Region 2, Essequibo Coast and the islands, wherever you're joining us from. You're joining us from outside of Guyana, of course. Quite a bit of our audience is outside of Guyana. Those of you joining us from the United States of America, all over where you are, whether it's in New York or Washington, D.C., New Jersey, the southern part of the United States, the Midwest. Welcome to Politics 101. Of course, North Canada, welcome to all of our viewers who are joining us from up there. And of course, those of you in Europe, especially England, the United Kingdom, Great Britain, whichever of those names you use, welcome. I know it's late there, it's not good evening, it's good night, perhaps getting into the morning there. So we salute you for staying with us this late. Welcome. Those of you who are joining us from the Caribbean, Barbados, Antigua and Barbuda, St. Lucia, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, Grenada, and Carriacou, Martinique, Petit Martinique, sorry. Those of you who are joining us from Dominica, Montserrat, I know there are quite a few Guyanese there. How about those of you who are in the Virgin Islands, the British Virgin Islands, the US Virgin Islands, of course, St. Croix, St. John's, etc., etc. Welcome. And those of you in St. Thomas, welcome to Politics 101. It's good to be back. It's good to be back. I have to say that I miss the engagement here, and I'm eager to be back for us to continue the conversation. We've been trying to keep ourselves alive and posting stuff on the websites, the web pages, sorry, the Facebook pages, Politics 101, and I know that quite a few of you have been keeping up with what we've been doing on the pages there, Politics 101. Although we have not been on the program, we have been sharing lots of stuff there. So continue to follow us on our Facebook page, Politics 101, and related pages. Welcome to all of you. Last night we did a program. It was an Ipadagy program, book review, and we started last week with Brother Vincent Alexander doing a review of the book Black Skins, White Mask by Frantz Fanon, who of course hailed from Martinique and spent time in Africa, in Algeria. And Black Skin, White Mask is one of the better known books, and Brother Vincent Alexander did a review of that book. It's a book series that Ipadagy is doing. And last night I did a review of How Europe Underdeveloped Africa. Next week, brother Professor Dwayne Benjamin is going to do another Rodney book, and that is History of the Guyanese Working People. And the following week, Brother Andrew Hicks is going to do the signature book by Brother Kwame Nkrumah, former president of Ghana, laid out his theory and his thesis in the book Consociational Theory. I hope I get that right there. And so that series. And last night we did our Europe Underdeveloped Africa. And we had a long discussion. Well, not a long discussion, it was an hour program. We had a discussion on the origins of the book, what Rodney was advancing in the book, which was first published in 1972. And we were looking at some of the viewership of that program last night, the viewership on Politics 101 page. And we were amazed that we found that almost 60% of the audience was between the ages of 25 and 34. And another 20% between 18 and 24. So the viewing audience on Politics 101 pages last night for that review of How Europe Underdeveloped Africa, almost 80% of the viewing audience was between the age of 18, the ages of 18 and 34. Again, sometimes we get too much in front of ourselves because people say that young people are not into these things. And there it was that those numbers jumped out at us today. Young people between age 18 and 34, a program on the book, How Europe Underdeveloped Africa. Having that young audience, 80% of the audience, 80% of those who viewed the program as of today, young people between 18 and 34. So we are forced to rethink some of the arguments we make because sometimes we are shocked. I was talking to a colleague a little bit before we came onto the program, and we were trying to figure out what may have caused such a young audience to come to the fore. And we think that it has to do with the name Walter Rodney. I think it's a recognizable name across age group. And more Guyanese, 60% of the audience was from inside Guyana. That's the other thing. Usually people think on these programs, the majority audience is outside of Guyana. Well, on that program last night, 60% of the audience was from inside of Guyana. So it was refreshing. When I started the program, I didn't have in mind that I was speaking to a younger audience. But it was obvious to me that we needed to speak across generation, because what I was trying to do and what we are trying to do with these book reviews is to really bring the past into the present. And so How Europe Underdeveloped Africa, a book that Rodney wrote more than 50 years ago, and it's a book about development and underdevelopment, because what Rodney argued in that book is that if you trace history, you would see that up until the Europeans got to Africa, Africa was the most developed continent in the world. You had to be the most developed continent in the world if you were producing the first university in Timbuktu. Trade, they were using the camels. They discovered that camels could go long distances without stopping for water and so on. They could store water, and they used the camel, and they were doing tremendous trade, tremendous technology, agriculture technology, metal technology, and so forth. And so when the Europeans got to Africa, Rodney's arguing that Africa was the most developed, and Europe at that time was very underdeveloped. And Rodney was able to trace from the time the European entry how, because of the exploitation and extraction of the wealth from Africa to Europe, that Africa began to underdevelop and Europe became developed. And so using the theory, the model of development and underdeveloped, and making the argument that Europe is developed because Africa is underdeveloped. And that book, as many people know, changed the way people look at development, changed the way people looked at African history, and by extension, history of the world, history of the African diaspora. Brother Manning Marble, an African-American scholar, was later to write a book, How White America Underdeveloped Black America. Our own Eric Williams, even before Rodney, talked about capitalism and slavery, and showing how European capitalism was built on the capital, the wealth that they were able to forcibly get from the Caribbean. And so when one talks about development of Europe, one talks about the underdevelopment of the Caribbean using the Rodney thesis. So we tried last night to make that nexus and then to bring it forward to present day Guyana. As you know, we have been talking over the last couple of weeks within the context of the budget. We have been raising the question of development and underdevelopment because there are two parallel conversations that are happening in Guyana now. One conversation is that Guyana is developing, and what those who are making that argument, that they're pointing to the high GDP, they're pointing to the growth rate, they're pointing to expansion in the physical infrastructure, and they're saying that is development. But then there is the other conversation, and that is the conversation that in the midst of this development that they're talking about, mostly by the government and sections of the private sector, there is an underdevelopment. We are citing the IDB report that says that 58% of Guyanese are living in poverty. That is, that they're living on $1,300 or $1,500 Guyanese dollars or less, and that 38% are living in abject poverty. They're living on half of that. And the mystery there is how, in the midst of this development, there is this underdevelopment, because poverty is a sign of underdevelopment. The government counters by saying that the data that IDB used was collected in 2016, 2018. Well, one is not arguing against that, but we ask, what is the updated data? If you're saying that the IDB report is based on a dated data, and that those figures may not reflect the actual poverty that there is today, then we're asking, where is your data? Where is the updated data? Where is the data from 2022, 2023, 2024, so that we can update the poverty? Now, my argument is that even if the updated data shows that poverty is not 58%, but it's 48% or 38%, that is still astronomically high, given the amount of wealth that we are talking about in Guyana. $1.5 trillion budget. You're talking about a lot of money by Guyanese standards. And so therefore, your argument that it's not 58, then you're saying it may be 48. Well, 48 is damn high too. Or 38 is still high. The fact of the matter is that our country is plagued by poverty. And poverty is perhaps the most startling and the starkest indicator of underdevelopment. So we have this in one society. We have this development by numbers, as I call it, the high GDP, the high growth rate. And then you have the very high rate of poverty, the very high cost of living. We started out tonight by listening to the Mighty Sparrow, talking about capitalism gone mad. He sang that calypso in 1980, 46 years ago. And if you were to close your eyes and listen to those words, you would think that he's talking about present-day Guyana. The market is out of control. The prices are high. I mean, Lord, yesterday, bought some plantains. And the girl told me, I said, well, how much, what a pound? She said, $250 a pound, $250, not that, $250 a pound for plantain, $250 a pound for plantain. I bought 4 pounds of plantain, it's $1,000. 58% of our people are existing on $1,300 per day. So if they were to buy 4 pounds of plantain, money done, they can't buy nothing else. They'll have to boil that plantain and eat that plantain alone. Just think about it. And I'm told that that $250 is a boxing country price. But if you go to Georgetown, it's $320 a pound for plantain. So if you live in Georgetown and you are poor, you buy 4 pounds of plantain, your money done. Your money done. So you're having these two parallel conversations, and it seems as though we are talking past. We're talking past each other. I tried in my budget presentation to draw attention to that, and thanks to all of you who've thought that my presentation made a lot of sense. Many people liked it. They felt that the presentation from the APNU parliamentarians were sound and met the mark and so forth. And we want to thank you all for that. I personally want to thank you all for thinking that what I tried to say made sense. Many of you alluded to the fact that we raised the bar for the conversation. And certainly I tried to do that. But I wanted to make this point to say that in societies like ours, that is societies that came out of 4 centuries of enslavement, another century and a half of colonial rule, you're talking about this structural problems of that society. A society where you produce one product, sugar. A society in which the entire country is a plantation, because they were all plantations. You're producing nothing else. And you're producing everything for export, because that sugar is exported, was exported to Europe. So you're producing one product, and everything you produce is for somebody else's consumption, not for your consumption. So you're not producing anything to reproduce yourself. And that is the society that we inherited at independence. That I usually say that the challenge of early independence was how to turn plantations into nations. Tremendous, onerous undertaking. Because you're talking about a plantation society that developed over 4 centuries. And now you are called upon at independence, white man gone. And he said, you're now free, you're independent. And he left you with some sugar plantations. And then books, as soon as he gone, the price of sugar on the world market started to drop to the point where the Europeans are now discovering new forms of sweeteners. They don't need sugar anymore. David Rudder said they don't need islands no more, because if they don't need sugar no more, they don't need islands no more. And so they're gone. And they left us with these plantations. And they don't want sugar anymore. You understand the plight there, the structural plight of a country like Guyana. Where are we at independence going to get the kind of revenue to do the kind of development? Because if you are producing sugar for 4 centuries, all you need is people to cut the cane, because that's what we did. Plant the cane, cut the cane. And so your skill set is geared towards planting and cutting cane. There's no need for teachers, because education is not a priority. There is no need for nurses and doctors, because they don't care if you die. They want you to die. They walk you. You die at 24, 25 years old, and you're done. There is no need for mechanic. So we are left with an unskilled labor force. And so the choices that the post-independence leaders had to make were very strategic choices. They had to decide, what are we going to spend limited revenue on? Are we going to spend it on education? Are we going to spend it on healthcare? Are we going to spend it on bridges and roads? What are we going to spend it on? Are we going to spend it on defending ourselves against Venezuela? They had to make some strategic choices because they inherited structural problems. And a lot of the Caribbean countries, including Guyana, decided, look, we are going to invest in education and healthcare. And, you know, we couldn't spend on the big network of bridges and all of that because the money was limited. And we were able, as societies in the Caribbean, we were able to put a small dent on structural uneducatedness of the society. All of us on this program are products of that investment in education. Wherever we are in the world, we have developed skills thanks to the post-independence government. The early post-independent government invested in education. And then, of course, we came to the end of the Cold War and the structural adjustment with the IMF and the World Bank, which said that our countries could not continue to spend on education and healthcare because we weren't balancing our budget. And so they wanted us to balance our budgets. And so they said, you can't spend anymore. So we had to stop spending on education as much as we used to, stop spending on healthcare, stop spending on better wages for workers, and so forth. And so we went from promise back to pain. Economic pain, socioeconomic pain. And now we have this windfall. Now we have this windfall. And as we enter the period of the petrostate and the windfall, we bring those structural problems with us. We bring the problem of miseducation or uneducatedness, if I may coin a word there. 50% of our students who enter high school, by the time they get to exams, they're dropped out. That's a fact. We bring poverty, whether it's 58% or 48% or 38%, we bring that poverty. We made a dent in poverty in the early independence, small dent. But then we had a decline because of structural adjustment when our governments were starved of resources and the IMF and the World Bank would tell us we can't spend on this. So we bring those problems into the oil economy. So here we have these structural socioeconomic challenges, homelessness, something I raised with the Minister of Social Security during the budget, the consideration of the estimates. What is it that you're doing about homelessness, which is a big problem on our streets? In the midst of plenty, here we have homelessness. Those are all signs of underdevelopment. And so, therefore, our argument, my argument, the Working People's Alliance argument, the APNU argument is this. Look, you have a windfall. You didn't expect it. And you have these problems that you really didn't create. To say that the PPP created poverty is to be dishonest. What they've done is they've done nothing to help to decline it. Or they've done little, to help to decline it. But they didn't create poverty. And so the PPP should not be ashamed that there is a high level of poverty. Rather, what they should do is say, look, we have this money now, and we have these problems. And a budget is, you're spending priorities. What are you going to spend on? And are you spending just for the sake of spending, or are you spending as a form of investment? And if you see it as a form of investment, then what are you investing in? What are your priorities? The government said this year's budget, people first. Well, that sounds good. People first, which means the government has recognized that you have to invest in people first. If you prioritizing, then at the top of that list of priority must be the people. Must be the people. And I ask in the National Assembly, when you say people, what do you mean? Do you mean rich people or poor people? Do you mean all the people? Do you mean women? Do you mean men? Do you mean workers in the private sector, workers in the public sector? Do you mean people by ethnicity? What do you mean by people first? Who are these people? And I gave them the benefit of the doubt to think that they're talking about all the people. So if you're talking about all the people, you cannot talk about a monolith, because we are a diverse society, diverse by gender, diverse by race and ethnicity, diverse by where we work, diverse by country and tongue, diverse by coastland and hinterland. So if you're saying people first, then you can't talk about a monolith. You have to have the kind of policies that appeal to people across difference. Across difference. And so therefore, in looking at the budget, I was looking for that. To say, okay, you say you are invested in all of the people. People first. But even among the diverse population, there are some people who are more in need, who are more impoverished, who are more unequal than others. So if you say people first, is it the working people that come first among this diverse people? Or is it the business class first? Is it Africans first and Amerindians second? Is it East Indian first and Portuguese second? What do you mean by people? And who gets priority? Which group gets priority? Are you talking about women and men? Are you saying women first in that group? So these are questions that anyone who is thinking about development must grapple with. Are you looking at the poverty rate and saying this budget is going to invest in anti-poverty policies? If you think, as I do, as a number of us do, that poverty is the primary albatross around the neck of our nation, that if we get rid of poverty, then we get rid of so much. Poverty, shadows say poverty is hell. Poverty is shame. Poverty leads people to do all kinds of things that they would not normally do. And so if you were to get rid of poverty, you free the human spirit, first and foremost. You free the human dignity, first and foremost. And then in a material way, you give them the wherewithal to live as full human beings. Because after all, when we get up in the morning, we are reproducing ourselves. You get up in the morning, you got bathe. To bathe, you got to get soap. You got to get water. You got to brush your teeth. You got to get toothpaste. It costs to reproduce yourself. You go to work, you got to wear clothes. You got to buy the clothes. Depends on where you work. If you're a public servant, you can go to work with jeans and slipper. You got dressed nice, and so it costs. So on a given day, the average worker, the average citizen is spending money to reproduce themselves every day. And when you go out there, You are saying, here is what I invest in. This clothes that I wear costs so much. The toothpaste to brush my teeth costs so much. The toothbrush costs so much. The breakfast that I eat this morning before I come costs so much. My children, they got to go to, I get young children, they got to go to daycare. It costs so much. The clothes I wear cost so much. When you calculate how much it costs you, the worker, to get yourself ready to go in a government office to work, and you say, I've made this investment on myself, and I'm now coming here, I'm selling my labor to the government, my government. It is expected that you will pay me enough to take care of those things I have to spend all day. When I get to work, I got to eat lunch. That's an extra cost. Transportation. Even if I own my own car don't run on water. You got to buy gas. You got to maintain the car. So when you count all of that money that you are spending on a given day to go to work, and you're saying to the government, I am coming here and selling my labor to you, you expect your government that is spending $1.5 trillion is going to say, at a minimum, we are going to repay you for what you have spent. And then we are giving you enough for you to spend tomorrow and next week and so on to come to work. And when you think that the wages, the minimum wage is $102,000 in the public sector, $102,000. When you divide that by 30, or you divide it by 4 weeks per month, you're talking about $25,000 per week. If you divide it by days, you're talking about no more than $3,500, between $3,000 and $3,500 a day. You know, look at those numbers. So if you are working for $3,500 a day, and you calculate how much you are spending per day to get to work, in transportation, in clothing, in the soap for your bed in the morning, in the perfume for make you smell nice, the money you got to pay your grandmother for keep you picnic, or you got to pay daycare, all of that, food you are eating in the morning, you got to eat in the midday. When you count all that money, it comes up to more than $3,500. But the government is paying you $3,500. And they're telling you that we are developing. We are not developing. We are underdeveloping. Underdeveloping. That's what is happening as far as our citizens are concerned. And so therefore, I sat in that National Assembly. And you're asking them, okay, there's an increase in the number of workers in X ministry. Can you tell us who those workers are and what their salary? When you hear the contract workers, the big advisors, $1.2 million. Go invest people, this, that. And then when you come to the clerk, $110,000, $120,000. That is what government is paying. They're saying that in the National Assembly. The contract workers are paid the big money, big salaries, that goes into the hundreds, the thousands, 500,000, 600,000, some of them gone into the million. And when you come to the workers, the other workers, the working class people, the clerks, the stenographers, I didn't even know that they still have those around and so on. All right? The secretaries, those people who man the ministries, they're working for just over minimum wage. And so you are underdeveloping them because every day they go home, they are in debt. Because to reproduce them, it costs them about $4,000, $5,000 a day to prepare themselves for work. And you are paying them $3,000 a day and you're taking out tax from it. which means every day you're shorting them $2,000. They are in debt by $2,000. By the time at the end of the month, they're in debt by $60,000 to $80,000. And I have only cited some of the costs. The economists will tell you there's much more that people are spending on that I didn't mention. And that is the society that we are living in. So this conversation about development, Guyana is developing. Guyana is developing. But it's developing for some people. We would be dishonest to say that nobody's happy with the budget. Some people are very happy with the budget. Some people will get rich as a result of this budget. Because you're spending money. You're paying for services. And for some services, you're paying a lot. And for other services, you're paying very little. So some people will indeed like this budget. And some people will obviously not like it because they're not gaining from it. So, brothers and sisters, this whole budget is really a sham. This whole business of people putting people first is a sham. And the government is pretending that is the greatest budget in the world. Now, as I said, there are some measures in the budget that are worthy of support. But there are many measures in the budget that are not worthy of support, not because the initiative is bad, but it's the way in which the initiative is being rolled out. If you're raising the income tax threshold, that is good. But if you're raising it from $130,000 to $140,000, and all that's happening is 5,000 workers are not going to pay income tax, then that is not worthy. If you were raising it from $130,000 to $200,000, then it's worthy of support because you are raising the income tax threshold consistent with the high cost of living. But just raising it by $10,000 and the initiative is good to raise the income tax threshold. But to raise it only by $10,000, that bad. And so it's another initiatives in the budget. But it's the objective of the initiatives. People can say, you're raising old age pension. Good. You're raising old age pension by $5,000. Bad. Terrible. So while I may be inclined to support raising old age pension, I can't support raising old age pension by $5,000. And don't tell me about all the other things old people going to benefit from. Indirectly. Tell me how they're benefiting directly. For a lot of old people, the old age pension is like a salary. And what we don't always talk about, that old age pension is not just to spend on themselves. A lot of grandparents are minding children. Mama dead, daddy dead. Mama down and out. Granny got to take pension and help those young people. So it's like a salary. And you are telling them, you're just giving them a $5,000 increase. Winston Jordan pointed out that 1% of $1.5 trillion is $10 billion. Just 1%. 10 billion. Just 1%. 10% is 100 billion. Oh my God. If you take just 1%, 2%, 3%, 5%, and said this 5% is for all people, what I call yesterday's children, because our older people, our elderly people are yesterday's children. They were children yesterday. They were young people yesterday. They made the sacrifices for our country when we didn't have plenty. They worked for little because we didn't have plenty. They worked for little because we had little. Now you have plenty. You have to give them some reparations. You have to give them some compensation. You have to give them some back pay because they made the sacrifice. And all you're giving them is $5,000. The question, are you just thinking about numbers? Or are you thinking about how numbers can contribute to the development of the human being or the underdevelopment of human being? And clearly, if this government is thinking it through, and you're giving $5,000 increase, then you are thinking about the underdevelopment of the elderly in their old age. Because if you're thinking about development, then they deserve more than $5,000 more. They deserve more than $40-something thousand. They look forward to that. You know, you talk to people, you live in a village and people talk to you all the time, and even when people don't talk to you, you observe. And sometimes we take it for granted. What a couple $1,000s mean to people. If you were to raise old age pension by $20,000, as they had said that they were going to carry it to $60,000, do you know what a difference that would make? $60,000 is still inadequate. But if you'd raise it to $60,000, it would make a difference. Small difference, but a difference. All the economists who are thinking about development of people are saying, look, our age pension need to go to $100,000. We have to deal with this question of the cost of living. The market determines prices. I was hearing chicken now is almost $500, $5,000, $500 pound. Pork gone up to $700, $800, and I understand these prices went up at Christmas time, and they stay up although Christmas gone. So by the time the poor buy 2 pounds of chicken or 2 pounds of pork, the money done. The money done. The prices go up and the prices stay up. So the market determines the prices. All right, good enough. But we put a government there to implement measures to keep the market from exploiting people. Now the person who is selling got to live. So if the person who's selling Ballanjay raise Ballanjay price by $100, they got to get an income too. The sellers have to get an income. So sometimes we are abusing the small vendor who's selling greens, raise the greens by a $50, a $60, we abuse them. But really, we ought not to be abusing them. The people we ought to be abusing is the government. Because when you go to the market and you cannot afford the prices are high because your money low, your money small. And so, in order to deal with the cost of living, we have to be able to control the prices in the market so that they're not exploitative. But we also have to be able to put more money, more wages in the hands of ordinary people. It has to be tackled at both levels, from the bottom in terms of wages and the top in terms of saying to the big merchants. Because often when the big merchants bring in things, they then sell it to a middleman, then the middleman sell it to another middleman, and that other middleman then sell it down to the retailer. By the time we go on and buy from the retailer, these prices are determined higher than the retailer, and we can scoff the retailers. But the retailers gotta make something. So the prices need to be controlled at the top. But very importantly, we have to put more wages in our people's hands. And this budget, I don't think it was a thoughtful budget. I don't think it's a budget that thought through the issues, the problems of our society. And you can tell when the comrades on the other side, on the government side, when they get up, almost all of them, and God bless them because some of them are very nice people. But when they get off the top of the budget, they start talking about the PPP manifesto and how great the PPP is. That the budget is more about political outcomes than socioeconomic outcomes. And you hear that from the speakers. I had cause to question and to point out the difference between a manifesto and a budget. And some one of them say, I don't understand what I'm talking about. A manifesto is the promise of a party. With its limited gaze, the party is promising this when it gets into government. That manifesto is geared towards your, first of all, your base. You want to convince your base to vote for you. And so the gaze of a manifesto is limited, it is political. Once you get into government now, and you have to talk about spending priorities for the entire nation, then it's a different story. The PPP budget has nothing in there about reparations. The PPP's manifesto has nothing in there about reparations. Has nothing in there about the International Decade of the People of African Descent. That's not part of their gaze. But when you get into government, you have to deal with those issues. And so there is a place where manifesto stops and budget begins. The budget is a budget for the nation. A manifesto is a manifestation, a manifesto of a party. And so what disappointed me most about this budget was not the initiatives. A lot of them are sound initiatives, but it was and is the thinking behind the initiatives. Because the thinking is reflected in the priorities. How can you say a budget is people first when 50.6% of that budget is infrastructure? Is infrastructure first? You may argue that people can benefit and will benefit indirectly from infrastructure. Yes, I grant you that. People will benefit from roads. People will benefit from bridges. But that benefit is limited. That benefit is contextual. They are what we call direct benefits. And you have to divide your revenue evenly, equitably between the direct and the indirect. And we don't see that in the budget. And so when people ask, did the opposition not see anything in the budget to support? Of course, there are initiatives in the budget that are laudable. But a budget has to be seen in its totality. A budget has to be seen in its objective, its outcomes. And you may support an initiative, but you do not support the outcome of the initiative that the government is looking for. And so it's easy to say, is there nothing in the budget that you can support? It's easy to ask that question. And I will ask the question of the government side, is there nothing in the budget that you all see from that side as bad? So you are asking us if there's nothing we see in the budget that is good. And we are asking you, I'm asking here tonight, is there nothing in the budget that you all see is bad? So, sisters and brothers, we are in serious times, as the title of our program tonight says. We are living in serious times. I've said that I fear for this country. And my fear is that what we are doing now will have consequences for 20, 30 years from now, when oil will no longer be king, when the society would have moved on. But the society would move on bearing the burdens that we are putting on the society today. The inequalities that we are reinstituting in the society will manifest itself, will manifest themselves 20 years, 30 years from now. Last night on the program on Walter Rodney's How Europe Underdeveloped Africa, somebody asked about where African Guyanese, and this is Black History Month, where do we stand in all of this? There's the underdevelopment of the poor in Guyana. But because the Black poor brings with it certain structural problems that are germane, certain structural problems that are unique to African Guyanese. Of course, their structural problems that are unique to Amerindians, to East Indians, the East Indian poor, the Amerindian poor, the African poor. Because of centuries of enslavement and inequality, the African poor has certain unique problems that the budget doesn't address. In fact, the policies of the budget are exacerbating the structural problems of the African poor. They're exacerbating the structural problems of the poor. But as I said last night, and I noticed it's captured in a news story today, that African Guyanese are the underdeveloped of the underdeveloped because of the structural problems and the stubbornness of the government to address those structural problems. To address those structural problems. When I raised the question of reparations and the subvention for Padaji, the people who went off the loudest were the African Guyanese in the PPP. It was quite a horrible, shameful display. Some of the Indian PPP people were looking at them as if they're crazy. If you hear how they went off on me. Brother Kwame McCoy, who spoke after me, told me that I only represent one class of people and one kind of people. I made it into Georgetown because some friends were here and I had to take them around a little bit on Saturday when I got some time. And one lady came up to me and she said, I hear Kwame tell you represent one class of people and one kind of people. And she said, finally, they give you your due recognition that you represent people. God, the incisiveness of our people is something else. And the one class of people and kind of people Brother Kwame was talking was black people. And I have no shame in representing black people. They're trying to say I ought to be ashamed to represent black people. I am not ashamed. I am one of 65. Well, it's more than 65 because the PPP get 4 other members there, technocrats. I think 4 of them. So they get 40, we get 29. So I think it's 69 or 70 members. I have no shame that I am one of 70 that mustered the courage to raise the issue of the plight, the particular plight of almost half of the population. It's mind-boggling that one of 70 has the courage. The other 69 didn't muster the courage to go there. I am sure opposition parliamentarians I know on our side would love to go there. But they're not going to go there because as soon as I went there, racist, David Hines is a racist. He only think about one black people. What black we give in our programs benefits to all people. And they went off. But I said then, and I'm saying it again tonight, I have absolutely no shame in being one of 70 representatives of the people in the National Assembly to raise my voice, to appeal to the government in the age of plenty, relative plenty, to remember that there are unique challenges of African Guyanese that should be addressed in a spending plan. After all, our Amerindian brothers and sisters, I am so impressed with them. Amerindians on the government side, Amerindians in WIN, Amerindians in APNU, and they're arguing not whether there is something in the budget for Amerindians. They're arguing how much more Amerindians should get. God bless them. I love them. That is how it should be. But you ask the question, why Amerindians can advocate for their own and not be called racist. And as soon as an African advocate for Africans, he's called a racist. Guyana has to answer that question. Guyana has to answer that question. The United Nations has recognized that question by dedicating 2 decades to people of African descent. They said black people need recognition. That despite changes in the law, black people are still not recognized. Their humanity, the anti-black racism. United Nations has said that, and they call on the states around the world to deal with it. Clearly, our state, our government are not dealing with it. I look at my Indian brothers and sisters, and they're advocating for sugar workers, mostly Indian. God bless them. Despite the fact that sugar is not bringing in revenue in a direct way to Guyana. $30 billion set aside for sugar. And they're arguing for more. They're justifying $30 billion, quite rightly. I listen to my Indian brothers and sisters advocating for rice farmers. And when I raise my voice and ask about public servants, they heckle me. Why our Indian brothers and sisters could advocate for sectors of the economy that are predominantly Indian, and an African cannot advocate for sectors of the society that are predominantly African? Guyana must answer that question. And I am going to use my presence in the National Assembly at every opportunity I get to put that question squarely in their faces. Squarely in their faces. It's an injustice to people of African descent. We're not asking, I am not asking for more than others. Yes, there are policies, what we call one tide lift all. There are policies that lift all races. But some of those policies lift the races not equally. If you are at 0.5, if you are at -5, and another group is at 5, and we are all lifted by 5, the -5 will become 5, and the 5 will become 10. But if we take into consideration that the -5 is there not because of their fault, we would also implement policies to bring the -5 up to where the 5 is. And that is all we are asking for in a country that we have slaved for. And the black people on the PPP side were the loudest in heckling me. But I am determined that the National Assembly is another platform. Yes, we are not going to be able to get them to change anything. They will have their way because they have a majority. But we are going to be able, and we ought to be able, to bring to bear on that institution the things that they want hidden. Many people have pointed out, and I thank you all, that our parliament looks different. At least one parliamentarian dresses in African clothing almost every day for the last 2 weeks. Even the speaker one day wore his African dashiki. And some of the parliamentarians are pointing out to me, David, like this thing catching on. Intangibles. It's an intangible, but it's a significant development. They were able to amend the standing orders, I think 2 years ago, to have ethnic dress. And people have pointed out that Brother Kwayana, even before the standing orders were changed, wore African clothing when he went back to Parliament between 1985 and 1990. And so I am glad to follow in the footsteps of my mentor, my brother, my teacher, and to help to fulfill his own legacy. Wearing an African dashiki will not cause the PPP to change their minds about the distribution of resources. It will not. But what it will do is to say to the African child, the African mother, the African teacher, and the African father, that you have a place in Guyana and that there is someone who is not afraid to raise your identity alongside others. That there is someone in that assembly who's not ashamed of you and not ashamed of your identity and your symbols. And that goes a long way. That goes a long way. The struggle goes on as it must. The struggle goes on as it must. The APNU is going to take the budget to the streets, starting, I think, on Friday at the Stabroek Market Square, where parliamentarians and others will discuss the budget in the public space. And we intend to move around the country. We intend to go to Region 10 and Region 5 and Region 6 and the hinterland regions and take the budget to the street corners, the highways and the byways, as they used to say in the old days. And I hope to participate in some of those, where we get a chance to debate with our people, with our supporters, the budget. We get a chance to extend our remarks. We on the APNU were granted 15 minutes plus 5 to wrap up 20 minutes to give our budget presentation. As we equitably distributed the time that was given to the opposition, we would have gotten an extra 2 hours. But we were not able to get the 2 opposition groups to agree to distribute the time equitably. The call ultimately was made by the opposition group with more seats, and WIN has 16 seats, and they had the call on whether to distribute the time equitably or not. And for whatever reason, they made the call not to do so. And so we were consigned to 15 plus 20 minutes, while others on the opposition at 35 minutes. That is the nature of our politics at this moment, and I don't want to quarrel over it. I don't want to, our supporters have a right to be peeved. But I think as a leader, we have to put those things in context. I, at a personal level, interacted very well with the WIN members of parliament, all of them. Some of them I can even call friends over the last couple of weeks. And so therefore, I'm not saying what I said to denigrate the people in WIN, because we are all on the opposition side. And those of you who followed the debate would remember I started my presentation by standing up for one of the WIN members of parliament that they were denigrating because he got a gold scholarship. They say you should not criticize gold. And I felt that I needed to start my presentation by defending that brother. And defending him not just as a fellow opposition, I'm defending because I'm a senior. And when you're beating up junior people, those of us who are senior, those of us whose voice may be a little bit louder, have a right to stand up. I come from a village, and villagers don't like advantage taking. They don't like it at all. And so therefore, at an informal way, the parliamentarians of the two parties get along very well. But it will take some time for the opposition unity that many of you crave. As I said, given the way things pan out, what we have done on the opposition side is create a divided opposition. And, we create a divided opposition and then we expect automatic unity. It doesn't happen that way. That's not how human beings operate. I am sure that as time goes on, that we would find ways to unite. But for now, I'm asking our supporters to be patient, to be patient, to be patient. Sisters and brothers, we are in serious times, and these times will continue to be serious. And we have to remain engaged. We have to recognize that if we create an unjust society, if we allow an unjust society to be created today, that society will carry over in the next 20, 30 years. We will be handing our children and our grandchildren an unjust society. And that is why we have to stand up for justice. We have gotten a little bit soft, all of us collectively, and we have to find a way to raise our voices and to raise our level of resistance, because we are in serious times. We are going to be back tomorrow. Those who are here tonight, and I notice quite a lot of you are here tonight for our first night back, please spread the word and let everybody know that we are back. And we are going to continue to bear witness. We are going to continue to give voice to those whose voices may be muted by fear, muted by the desire not to rock the boat, because discrimination is alive and well in Guyana. But we shall overcome. We shall overcome. We must overcome.